and I'm your worship associate this morning. Please rise, embody your spirit, and join us in singing hymn number 38, Morning Has Broken in the Gray Hymn.
Good morning. My name is Jim Russell, and I am the president of the Board of Trustees here of this congregation and fire warden, one of two, for this morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of the Hudson Valley. Whether you have been with this congregation a decade or more, or this is your first time visiting us, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. Whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. Whatever your heritage, we welcome you. We respectfully acknowledge the territory in which our church building sits as the ancestral homelands of the Munsee, Lenape, and Wappinger people. I just have one announcement. If you're here in the sanctuary, after the service, we're going to have a special celebration, a special treat, so please join us for coffee hour. For the most up-to-date information on everything that's happening here, please refer to our weekly e-newsletter and check our website frequently. And please join us for conversation after the service. If you were present in the sanctuary, please join us for coffee and conversation in Fellowship Hall. If you're watching on the live stream, the link for our Zoom coffee hour can be found in the Saturday reminder in your email. If you're just recently joining us and would like to receive our weekly e-news, please email us at uucroton@gmail.com with your name, and we will make sure you're added to our e-news list. Also, please remember to silence your cell phones at this time. Once again, we welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of the Hudson Valley.
It is really good to be back here. invocation this morning is from the Reverend Tony Vincent, who fittingly started a small congregation in San Francisco. And her prayer, Spirit of the Moment, I think can call us in on this changing season. Here in this holy place on Albany Post Road, on this day of fading summer and beckoning fall, let us give ourselves to the spirit of the moment and find the sacred oneness which binds all life together. Knowing that much is beyond our ability to change, life calls us still to act in compassion and fairness wherever the opportunity presents itself. Let us seize the strength of the ritual, remember, renew, and relive the taste of hard-fought struggles in the human search for justice. We are hungry for the lessons of the past and for guidance toward the promise of the future. May we, all of us, be open to all that expands our awareness and welcome all to enter our embrace. Amen. As Unitarian Universalists, we gather all around the world, here in Croton, in Manila, in San Francisco, in Staten Island. And in these multiple locations, people come to say, you matter. Every person is inherently worthy. All of us have the right to flourish, and that religion can be anchored in freedom and hope and love. In our congregation, we have a beautiful bell tower. And one of the rituals that we have is we invite the youth, the young people in our congregation, to go to that bell tower every week and ring the bells to sound for our values. So I now invite Jane Podell, our Director of Religious Exploration, to invite all children in the sanctuary. Please join Jane in the bell tower and ring those bells as many times as you want to symbolize hope this Sunday morning. And in that spirit of joy and dedication, may we gather today. May it be so. It is good to see you.
Today's chalice lighting words are from Edna St. Vincent Millay. Now the autumn shudders in the rose's root, far and wide the ladders lean among the fruit. Now the autumn clambers up the trellised frame, and the rose remembers the dust from which it came. Brighter than the blossom on the rose's bough sits the wizened orange, bitter berry now. Beauty never slumbers, all is in her name, but the rose remembers the dust from which it came. Please join me in our unison affirmation. The words are in your order of service. Inspired by love, our mission is to seek our true nature, connect deeply and openly, and act for justice. Now please rise, embody your spirit, and join us in singing hymn number 1009, Meditation on Breathing, in your teal hymnal.
is an opportunity in our service to just meet the people around you. Before we do that, I just want to reintroduce myself. My name is Reverend Daniel Lawlor, and believe it or not, I am the minister of this congregation. And I have just come from the most amazing journey, which you'll hear a little more about, but I just want you to know our son is healing and healthy, Yumi is healing and healthy, and we have been surrounded by so much love over this past season in our NICU journey. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my soul for the compassion that you have shown at this time. It's been truly meaningful. And what we're about to do was actually very transformative for me, because when I was in San Francisco, part of my spiritual practice was going to congregation on Sundays. And I went to the Unitarian Universalist Society of San Francisco, and they religiously have a greet your neighbor time, and I found it profoundly healing. And one moment that I want to share, and then we'll say hello, is two people turned around and they introduced themselves, and I explained, my son and wife, they're across the street at the hospital. And a woman said, last year, my husband was really sick when we were on a trip to New York. He ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks. And on Sundays, I would go to All Souls, New York, and I didn't know what was going to happen. But I want you to know New York took care of my husband, and San Francisco is going to take care of your son. So, greet your neighbor might change your life. Let's greet our neighbors. One of the gifts of our tradition are moments of spiritual practice, habits, rituals that we can do to help center ourselves, to get connected to what's bigger than us, to be present. I invite us into a time of meditation for all ages, where we'll use an exercise from the great teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, from the book, The Blooming of a Lotus. In it, he writes, breathing in and bring complete attention to that in-breath is a possibility and an exercise to bring you back to the present moment. By dwelling in the present moment, you put an end to attachments to the past and anxieties about the future. Life is only available in the present. It is necessary to return to this moment, to be in touch with life as it really is, to be alive and to touch all the wonders of life within you and around you is truly a miracle. We need only to open our eyes and listen carefully to enjoy life's richness. That is why the present moment can be the most beautiful and wonderful moment, when you know how to be aware of your breathing to bring yourself back. This exercise has 5 parts. Returning to my body in the present moment. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Breathing in, I am aware of the whole length of my in-breath. Breathing out, I am aware of the whole length of my out-breath. Breathing in, I am aware of my whole body. Breathing out, I can relax my whole body. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Breathing in, I dwell in the present moment. Breathing out, it is a wonderful moment. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. We will sing Go Now in Peace, and children in attendance are invited to join our religious exploration program. Today, they are going to learn more about a new Unitarian Universalist mascot. When you go to Fellowship Hall afterward, you'll know what I mean. May we sing Go Now in Peace.
Today's reading is a selection from Intimations by Zadie Smith. As Unitarian Universalists, we draw upon and are inspired by sacred, secular, and scientific understandings to seek wisdom and practice compassion. Our reading today is from the contemporary author Zadie Smith, and a selection from her 2020 pandemic-era collection, Intimations. Smith describes the collection as personal essays, small by definition, short by necessity. From A Woman with a Little Dog. The funny thing about Barbara is she has a little dog, Beck. who she insists is a well-behaved dog, but who in reality either barks or tries to bite pretty much everyone who comes near, except Barbara. Barbara now smokes and eats on the bench outside the hairdresser, properly intended for clients of the salon. But no one minds, because this Barbara and Beck we're talking about, regular in habits and known to all. There she sat, and I could see Barbara was preparing to shout one of her ambivalent declarations at me about the weather or a piece of prose or some new outrage committed by the leader of the country, which, in Barbara's mind, only theoretically includes her own city. I was keen to hear it. Instead, Barbara said, in a voice quieter than I've ever heard her use, "Thing is, we're a community, and we've got each other's back. You'll be there for me, and I'll be there for you, and we'll all be there for each other, the whole building. Nothing to be afraid of. We'll all get through this together, all of us."
It's fitting that we hear those words from Zadie Smith about the power of community, because at this moment we're going to lift up a member of our community who we remember and we love. His name is Al Raymond. Al Raymond. I had the honor of officiating his life memorial. I got to meet his nephews and nieces and great-nephews and great-nieces, this huge family, and they loved Al. They loved Al. And what I loved about Al was his pure honesty, his complete commitment to be himself, and his profound faithfulness to institutions. It's a time when people don't trust groups, and there's really good reasons for that. But Al gave decades of his life to progressive causes, year in and year out. He was a board member. He worked phone call hotlines for people in need. He did so much of the quiet, unsung work that allows life-giving faith to exist in the world. And he would do it while joking about dessert. He loved dessert. And it is a gift and an honor today to introduce from the Loft, which is one of the many communities that Al was dedicated to, Scott, who's going to speak a little bit about Al Raymond's dedication to this amazing community here in Westchester. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Daniel. It is sad to be here this morning because Al introduced me to this congregation many, many years ago. I had never been to a UU congregation before. As a recovering Catholic, I had never known the power of the fellowship of UU congregations. So it is a little bit sad to be here this morning, because I know that whenever I've been here before, over the 20 years I've known Al, he was always here with me. But I know Al is still with us in our hearts, in our memories, for everyone who knew him. And for those who didn't, the stories that we'll share about him and our memories and our comments, you'll begin to know Al as well, and he'll live on in you. Al was a volunteer at the Loft LGBTQ+ Community Center I don't actually even know, Al predates me at the center, and I've been there for 20 years. And he was a volunteer on our helpline. And the helpline actually predates the Loft. The helpline was founded in 1973 by very, very brave persons who saw the need for a safe place for people to communicate in search of resources for the community, in search of just a kind, gentle, accepting voice for the community. Because as you can imagine, in 1973, things were a lot different for the LGBTQ+ community. So for many years, Al was the recipient of those helpline communications, whether they be through phone calls, whether they be through drop-ins to the center in White Plains, and it took him a little bit long to get used to it through email, which he eventually did. I answered those emails. And what makes me happy is to think about all of those people who Al assisted in all of his years of helping, all of those people who were connected to affirming resources, all of those people who maybe were in crisis and Al was able to connect them to supportive services, all of those people who many times just wanted to talk to somebody, and Al was that listening ear. Al was giving that peer, we call it peer counseling, even though he wasn't a therapist. He was just a compassionate person who would just listen, and sometimes that's all what people needed, was to be heard and to share what they're going through. So those memories of Al help with my sadness that he's no longer here amongst us. He also would bring lots of joy at our convenings, because let's be honest, I mean, Al was a character. I mean, the Gilligan's Island bucket hat, the shorts 365 days a year, the socks. And so people would like, who is this guy? Who is this one? And he would play at loft gatherings these German marching songs, and he'd have a stein, and we'd have to assure people it has nothing to do with the Nazis. It's just good old-fashioned marching music. He was a character, and I will definitely miss him. But we honored, the one time I saw Al in a suit was when we honored him at our annual gala for his work and dedication to the center. He wore a gray suit, but he kept on his blue hat. So he just had to keep that part of his style with him. The Loft is about to embark on one of our biggest projects ever. We are building a brand new center in downtown White Plains. It will be right next to the Westchester County Board of Elections building at the intersection of Coropus and Court Streets. We will have a medical center with us, which is coming in through Connecticut, called Circle Care Center, to provide affirming medical care for our community. And then above us will be 140 affordable housing units, specifically designated for, it can't be exclusively for the LGBTQ plus community because it's being used with public dollars, but we're going to do everything in our power to get as many of our community members' applications into that lottery as we can, to know that they will be in housing that is safe and affordable and affirming for them for the rest of their years they choose to live there. So that project, well, it was supposed to break ground in June, and then it was supposed to break ground in the fall, and now hopefully it'll be breaking ground in the spring. But we are so appreciative over these decades of this congregation's generosity to the Loft. The Share the Plate that you have done over the years has been so much welcomed with so much gratitude. And then also, as this congregation begins its journey to offer its own services in Peekskill at the end of October, we've been in communication with Margie Kemper to help any step of the way that we can, so that way those programming that you're offering for LGBTQ plus youth in Peekskill, which is so needed, is going to be a huge success and beneficial to all those youth and families who utilize the service. So as we embark on a huge project of our own, and your congregation embarks on this programming to support LGBTQ plus youth, I know that Al is smiling, and that this congregation over the years became a welcoming congregation with Al's assistance and guidance. And thank you for being such an amazing spiritual home for Al all these years. I do want to just take a moment, because for those who knew Al, just if you want to just share a word or two. I welcome curmudgeon, because that at times could. Our very first letter to our newsletter was written by Al, and it was a very curmudgeonly letter about how the loft spends its money. But it be done in very good intentions, but if anyone would like to just share a memory of Al, a word or two, as we lift him up in this space this morning. Anyone? Yes.
I'm Pete Calloway, and did the welcoming congregation process, and Al had a major role in that. And I must say that I don't think we really knew him before that, but he did come into committee with us and talk about his life, and that he lived in fear for a great deal of the early part of his life because of the laws of the land. And he was just so afraid that even in a traffic stop, he might be discovered. And that was quite a revelation, but he was quite happy and felt safe here.
Yeah, Al came out when he was 65, so it's definitely a large part of his life where he felt a need for that safety to still keep that information close to his heart. So yes.
My name's Terry, and one of the things I love about this congregation is that you get to interact with people, and your children get to interact with people that they may not see in their regular life. And Brian and Al were chatting for a while when he was a little boy, probably 7 or 8, and he asked me what gay was. So I sort of gently explained what gay was, and he said, "Can I ask you a question about gay people?" And as a mother, you get a little nervous, and I said, "Sure you can." And he said, "Do they all wear shorts in the winter?" And I wasn't sure I should tell that story to Al, but I did.
Yeah.
I was in IT support and user support for many years, so I had got Al started using the computer back in the dark ages when you had 9600. If you were lucky to have 9600 baud rate through your telephone connection. Anyway, I just remember, working with him. There were any number of 4-letter words that would fly out of his mouth during training, but he finally got it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, he did.
He was so thrilled eventually.
Yes. Yes.
So I have 2 things I want to share. First of all, I've been here a long, long time, and years ago, I used to run something called Drama Sundays, which was like an annual Sunday service. And Al was always one of the first people to volunteer. He loved, being able to do a little bit of acting. Didn't have to memorize any lines, so he got a big kick out of that. And he's been very supportive of the theater that we're doing here now as well. So that's one thing. That's a really joyful memory of Al. And the other memory I have of Al, which is I think amusing. So during lockdown, when all of our services were on Zoom all the time, as you can imagine, that was a tad challenging for Al. So we had a tech team, and we literally had one person on the tech team that was devoted to muting Al. Because Al would just break in whenever he couldn't hear something or couldn't see something, and he would unmute you, unmute you, unmute you.
Yes, yes.
Hi, I'm Pat Friedman. I was very close to Al for the last 10 years. The last couple of years, he was not himself. It was such a hard time, and that was hard to watch. But if you ever write anything about Al and you use the word curmudgeon, you must give me a footnote. I want to see my name now. He wore that word with such pride. It just was so wonderful, and we spent so many hours, canasta and
Oh yeah, the canasta.
and,
Yeah.
oh my gosh,
in his and John's honor, I taught a game of canasta to my new mahjong players, so I can hear them up there shuffling. I know it. I just know it. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
I'll share two stories about Al. One is in reference to the love of desserts. I think the last ice cream sundae we had, I just have this memory of him, going over and piling on the whipped cream and saying, I'm lactose tolerant. I love. And the second one was at a memorial luncheon we had for him here, a remembrance luncheon we had a few weeks. I was just struck, I knew folks from the law, multiple bus transfers to get up here to pay tribute to him. And then we had two folks on the co-op board. I didn't know he was on his co-op board as well. And I was like, oh yeah, he hosted us here for meetings. And so all these aspects of his life that I, how he was involved was really, really remarkable.
Al used to sit right here every Sunday. And he would, when I went to a service, he would tell me beforehand and afterwards which songs he thought I should have sung. Really like when we would do hymn sing, if we did the wrong version of the song, This Is My Land, or whatever, if we did the other version, he was so contemptuous of it. It's like, it's all wrong. Everything.
Well, Al was a proofreader of our newsletter, and oh gosh. Whew. Just after the newsletter would go out, we can time, okay, when's he gonna call? When's he gonna call with the edits? But thank you, and I encourage these memories and shares to continue. Al loved dessert, Al loved dinner, lunch, breakfast, leftovers, but it was just I think a feeling of there are individuals who have food insecurity and just wanting to make sure nothing goes to waste. I love you, Al, and rest in pride. Thank you.
We come together in community to share with one another, to support one another, and to celebrate one another. We bear sacred witness to each other in this honored ritual. As we begin, know that there are both great sorrows and great joys in our world that must be acknowledged as well. We light our first candle to honor those in pain, victims of violence and war and oppression all around the world. We light our second candle because we understand that amidst all of that pain, there is also celebration and joy in our world. We honor that joy and sorrow are woven together. For some of us here today, this has been a week of life-changing joy that needs to be lifted up in this worship. For others, this has been a time of deep pain and sorrow that needs to be shared to make the burden lighter. If this has been such a time for you, I invite you to come forward to light a candle and to briefly tell us of your joy or sorrow. You may also raise your hand in a silent acknowledgement of your joys and sorrows, and we will light a candle for you.
Peter Calloway. Today is my 34th wedding anniversary. And by introduction to a second joy, not long after we were married, we adopted a mixed race son, and his birth mother was my wife's niece. So if you can keep a track of that. Here's the second part. My son is now 34, and a year ago he was asked if he would be a surrogate father for a long time lesbian couple that they were very closely friendly with. Well, he was overjoyed and flew from Seattle back to Nashville to provide the necessary, and and a pregnancy resulted, and today, by C-section, there will be a birth. So the question is, am I a grandfather?
As you know, I'm Jim Russell, and last Wednesday I had the joy of being at the Russell Cottage in Maine on the beach and celebrating a big birthday of my wife, Jenny Stillman, who is enjoying a multiple of 10 years.
Hello, I'm Pat Krugman. It is so good to be back here. I've had one, and to see you too. Oh my gosh, we missed you. The last month has been very challenging for me, which many of you know. I had pneumonia for about 3 weeks. Thank heavens for my neighbors that really encouraged me to go to what is it called? Urgent care. Thank you. And I was starting to get over that, and then all of a sudden, I started having these palpitations. I've had them for 10 years, but they started, I had, maybe 3 a year. One morning I had 3 in the morning. So I've been in the emergency room. I'm fine. But I missed coming here and seeing everybody. But thank you to all of you who wished me well, brought me matzo ball soup from the Croton Diner, which I highly recommend, very low sodium. Thank you, everybody. It's so wonderful to be back.
So, a little joy flash plug for my theater group, the resident theater company of this congregation. Our next production is opening this coming Friday, running for 2 weekends. So please come and see it. Please support us. All the information about it is in the e-news, as well as flyers posted around this building. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Sharon Lazarov. I had the great joy of celebrating my brother's 90th birthday last Sunday out on Long Island, and all our family was there. We have a small family, but everybody was there. It was especially poignant for me because my brother and I were estranged for about 30 years, but we reconnected about 15 years ago, and we've been able to just ignore the angry years and get back to the closeness that we felt as very young children, and it was a real treat for me. So.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria, and I just want to say that last Monday I went to see my surgeon, and he is extremely pleased with the recovery that I'm making, and how apropos that Maestro Blake Rowe was playing this beautiful song, which really touched me deeply, Gracias a la vida, thanks to life. How apropos was that? So I thank the Almighty for these gifts, and one of the greatest gifts, I think it was late last year, I'm trying to remember, when I set foot here in this lovely community, and I was like a duck in water right away. And I said, oh my gosh, this is lovely. And I keep coming back, and then I keep thinking, geez, why can't I just shrink each and every one of you and put you on a chain and bring you home with me? But, that's not possible, so I'll just keep coming back. Thank you for your support and love and kindness. Thank you.
It's me again. Tomorrow would have been Al's 92nd birthday. So maybe in Fellowship Hall we can sing happy birthday to him. I think he'll be listening, and he will be very annoyed if we don't.
I have one more birthday to add. Friday would have been my late father's 69th birthday. Unfortunately, he passed away suddenly in 2017 before Maggie was born, when he was only 61. So it's sad she never got to meet him, but we've been able to talk a lot about the things he enjoyed, and it's been nice to share that with her.
I have two candles. One is in honor of the life of my wife's grandmother, who just died this week at 95 years old. She was a farmer. She raised 9 children. Some of her children are in Korea, some are in California, some are right here in New York. And just a really amazing woman who lived a remarkable life. And so just a candle in honor of her. And the second candle is in honor of all the families and all the nurses and all the doctors who are in NICUs right now. Some people have beautiful stories to go home. We know of a wonderful family who was not able to bring their daughter home, and we just want to hold all those families who need love and are giving love and receiving love all over right now. Thank you.
And then we will light one more candle for all those joys and sorrows that we hold in the silence of our hearts, and for all those that are still looking for a home where they too can share their joys and sorrows.
Before our sermon, I just ask that we join in a moment of prayer, pause, meditation. Spirit of life and love, bigger than the universe, smaller than a grain of sand, be with us today. Help us to be present to one another, to really see each other, to really listen to one another. And as we go forth throughout all the encounters we have this week, may we remember to be present. May it be so. There is a children's book that I think magically encapsulates our faith. It is called, I'm not making this up, Unitarian Universalism is a very long name. I have read hundreds, perhaps thousands of pages of beautiful and complicated theological tomes. I have read Bernard Loomer's The Size of God. Very large, he argues. I have read all of these complicated theological language, but this book actually very simply conveys what we're about. And it talks about spiritual practices, rituals, symbols of our faith. Do we pray? What is meditation? What is a congregation? Who are we? How are we to be with one another? And I bring up this book because I think over the last half year in particular, I have been trying to best articulate What is it about this faith that has been so healing for me? Why do I want my own child to come up in this type of sanctuary and community? What is it about water ceremony and flower communion and chalice lighting and joys and sorrows and coming of age that has made a difference in my life and the life of other people? And I come to this point that there's something powerful about a pew well cared for. Space for someone to come in on a Sunday when they're feeling broken. As you know, or some of you know, this past year, my wife went into a very early pregnancy on a business trip to San Francisco. She went into labor. While going into labor on that flight, in tremendous pain, I'm not making this up, a male doctor on the flight, who was an ophthalmologist, actually told my wife, "Don't worry, you have sciatica." If you ever needed an example of mansplaining, it's telling a pregnant person in labor that her birth pains are sciatica. Thankfully, the rest of the crew did not listen to the ophthalmologist and began their emergency care support routines. One of Yumi's best friends was able to meet her at the airport. An ambulance took her from the tarmac to the closest hospital, where our son was born by C-section. And then within an hour, they were both transferred to a very intensive neonatal care unit in San Francisco, where our son lived for 66 days. He was born at 2 pounds and 5 ounces. All his organs were formed. He was remarkably tiny. We did not know what our journey would be. For his name, we chose Jung, which is a Korean name which means community. And throughout his life, he has been attended to and cared for. And Jung is also a family name connecting him to his great-grandmother who passed, and speaks about all the resilience required to get through life. And now I'm so happy to tell you, Jung is 14 pounds. 14 pounds. But in one of those funny acts of providence, literally across the street from the California Pacific Medical Center was the first Unitarian Society of San Francisco. I couldn't avoid it if I wanted to. I was like, that's where I'm going to congregation. But it was a gift. And 2 spiritual practices that anchored me over that time. One was going to the meditation room at the hospital several times a week, writing an intention, care for Yumi, for Jung, and all people in the NICU. And then going to services and sitting in a pew and looking at a stained glass window and seeing sunlight come through. And I'll confess, I didn't always listen to every reading. I would look at the space. But there was something powerful and healing in knowing I can come here, and there are kind people. And they don't expect anything except me just to be honest. Reverend Jose Ballastar of blessed memory was my first minister in our tradition, and he would say, the beautiful thing about Unitarian Universalism is you can be honest. I remember one time he stood at our pulpit and Reverend Jose said, you can be weird and we'll love you. And that's why I'm a Unitarian Universalist. That all over this world, there are congregations of people trying to cultivate a community anchored in ritual and love and freedom. Yumi and I went to London this year, in January, and we visited the Kensington Unitarian congregation. And in that community, they light a chalice They have a joy in sorrow. And there was an elder man who got up before the congregation, and he said, you know, I've had a hard time walking lately, and sometimes I fall. He's like, and I know there's so much going on in the world, and there are so many reasons for us not to trust one another. And this is a different country, but responding to the same anger all around the world in industrial countries right now. But he said, but you know what? When I fall down, people help me get up. When I fall down, people help me get up. And they don't ask me what church I go to. They just bend over and they help me get up. So I still believe people are good. I still believe people are good. When you go into the sanctuary at the First Unitarian Society of San Francisco, there are two giant phrases emboldened and blazoned on the wall on each side. On the right it says, the kingdom of heaven is within you. On the left side it says, what does the eternal require but to seek justice, practice mercy, and walk humbly? Walk humbly with your God. That building is from 1887, generations before our congregation even came into existence. That building's from 1887, but its history goes back to the 1850s. And a group of people who dedicated everything they could to make sure that California would never become a slave state and stayed with the Union during the U.S. Civil War. And then for nearly 200 years, people have tended those pews to make sure they're available. That congregation in London we went to, for part of its history, was actually illegal because our faith was not legal in the United Kingdom until the early 19th century. Because Unitarianism did not affirm the supreme head of the church, the king or queen. It was not an ancient tradition, but a dissenting interpretation of faith. And so a lot of the UK Unitarian congregations, some of the oldest, they're about the size of our sanctuary because people had to put them a little bit out of the way. City Centre in London is full of the most beautiful Anglican churches on planet Earth, but there aren't any Unitarian congregations there. You have to go to the outskirts, and then you find these beautiful Unitarian chapels. Some are quirky. One is pink. We have lavender doors. But these congregations believed in freedom of interpretation when it was illegal to do that. And they're still here. We are part of a wild stream of faith. You can go to Manila. You can go to the Kashi Hills of India. You can go to Johannesburg in South Africa. Unitarians and Universalists are everywhere. Keeping this chalice, inviting people to share, saying you can be honest and be in our religious community. And when I did not know what was going to happen to my wife or my son, this faith with a really long name showed up. And at the Unitarian Society of San Francisco, they recite the same affirmation that my home congregation did, which is that love is the spirit of this church and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. And the first service I went to at the UU Society of San Francisco was a child dedication. So, do I think 2024, from a certain perspective, is terrifying? Absolutely. But do I know in my bones that 2024 is a year that love has showed up all over the place, again and again and again and again and again, relentlessly? Yes. So I have hope. I want you to have hope too. Because I know we can get tired, but there has been someone making the coffee or making the tea at that church, that chapel in England for centuries. People volunteer to do that. There is someone who has been stewarding the finances at San Francisco. Different people volunteer for that anonymously for generations. Just as people have cultivated our faith, just as people have been good stewards. Later this fall, I'm going to have a sermon where I talk about what our congregation did in 1980 in the lead up to a tumultuous election. I know this because Carl Grimm gave me the archive newsletter from that fall. What an amazing tradition we are part of. Love shows up. Love is the Spirit. Service is the law. And may we help one another. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Each week, we make an offering from the bounty we are blessed to enjoy. We do this in the spirit of love and generosity, aware that we have benefited from those who have gone before, those who in their turn gave generously. Our offering goes to support the work of love and justice undertaken by this community. Today's offering will be shared with The Loft in Al Raymond's memory. Al was an active member of The Loft for many years. The Loft is an LGBTQ+ community nonprofit institution serving the LGBTQ+ community in Westchester, New York, and the lower Hudson Valley. For more information, please visit the website www.loftgaycenter.org. You can make your donation in several ways. If present in the sanctuary, you may give cash or a check in the offering plate as it comes by. From your homes, you can make your donation via credit card or PayPal using the links provided in the e-newsletter, or by visiting our website, uuchudsonvalley.org. Or if you prefer, you may always mail us a check. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. Please join me in the dedication of the offering. The words are in your order of service. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith. Now please join us in body or spirit in singing hymn number 163 in the gray hymnal, For the Earth Forever Turning. me in extinguishing the chalice, the words are in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Reverend Egbert Ethelred Brown, who is the founder of the Harlem Unitarian Church, would often pray, "We face a troubled and puzzled world. Therefore, O Spirit, teach us to love." May we love. May it be so.